Abandoned. Left without care and protection. Abandoned boats. Abandoned buildings. Abandoned factories. Abandoned property. The project had to be abandoned due to a lack of government funding. State of the art. The most recent stage in the development. State-of-the-art equipment. State-of-the-art technology. State-of-the-art facility. State-of-the-art design. They use state-of-the-art technology in their sound and lighting systems. Genetic. Relating to the science of genetics. Genetic engineering. Genetic modification. Genetic mutation. Genetic testing. Genetic engineering will have revolutionary consequences for mankind. Abnormal. Deviating from the normal or average. Abnormal bleeding. Abnormal behavior. Abnormal rhythm. Abnormal heartbeat. Researchers have identified the gene that causes abnormal growth. Groundbreaking. Introducing new ideas or methods. A groundbreaking research. A groundbreaking discovery. A groundbreaking ceremony. A groundbreaking study. He was awarded for his groundbreaking work in nuclear physics. Hierarchy. Organizing people according to status. A social hierarchy. A corporate hierarchy. A bureaucratic hierarchy. A business hierarchy. He worked his way up through the corporate hierarchy to become a manager. Imminent. Likely to occur at any moment. An imminent threat. An imminent danger. An imminent attack. An imminent war. Many medical experts believe that the conquest of cancer is imminent. Irreparable. Impossible to repair or make right again. Irreparable damage. Irreparable harm. Irreparable injury. Irreparable loss. Incidents of this type cause irreparable damage in relation to the environment. Statutory. Relating to formal laws or statutes. A statutory duty. A statutory requirement. A statutory obligation. A statutory provision. There is no statutory right to have bank holidays off as paid leave. Accelerate. To happen faster or earlier. Accelerate growth. Accelerate a process. Accelerate gradually. Accelerate rapidly. The progress of the disease seems to have accelerated in recent times. Tariff. System of taxes placed by a government. A tariff on imports. A tariff on goods. Impose a tariff. Levy a tariff. It is not clear whether higher tariffs would also be linked to environmental standards. Succinct. Very brief in statement or expression. A succinct summary. A succinct description. A succinct statement. A succinct verdict. The book gives an admirably succinct account of its evolution and its history. Aerial. Existing, happening, or operating in the air. Aerial attack. Aerial delivery. Aerial detection. Aerial inspection. Aerial photography has revolutionized the research of archaeology. Advocate. Publicly recommend or support. Advocate reform. Advocate legislation. Strongly advocate. Publicly advocate. They were strong advocates of free market policies and a multi-party system. Legitimate. To make something legal or acceptable. A legitimate heir. A legitimate ruler. A legitimate marriage. A legitimate excuse. Most consultants appear to recognize homeopathy as a legitimate form of medicine. Terminate. When something ends, or stop it. Terminate a contract. Terminate an agreement. Terminate a plan. Terminate a trade. The company has the right to terminate any contract without penalty. Cognitive. The processes of thinking and reasoning. Cognitive development. Cognitive impairment. Cognitive skills. Cognitive psychology. As children grow older, their cognitive processes become sharper. Heritage. Property that descends to an heir. Ancestors' heritage. World's heritage. Cultural heritage. National heritage. These monuments are a vital part of the cultural heritage of the worlds. Assessment. Making a judgment about something. Student assessment. Classroom assessment. Large-scale assessment. Standardized assessment. The assessment for the progression involves written assignments and practical tests. Barrier. An obstacle that prevents movement or access. Barrier. Language barrier. Safety barrier. Security barrier. The Sahara Desert is a permanent barrier between North and Central Africa. Exemption. Permission to ignore rule or obligation. Exemption from a law. Exemption from a tax. Seek an exemption. Grant an exemption. Candidates with a qualification in biology have an exemption from this course. Treaty. Official agreement between countries. A peace treaty. A climate treaty. A draft treaty. A formal treaty. Theoretically, the two countries are still at war, as a peace treaty was never signed. Complication. A complicated condition or structure. Short-term complications. Long-term complications. Serious complication. Severe complication. An added complication is the growing concern about the climate change. Empirical. Derived from experiment and observation. An empirical observation. An empirical finding. From empirical evidence. From empirical analysis. Empirical studies show that some alternative medicine is really effective. Repercussion. A bad consequence of an action. Serious repercussions. Potential repercussions. Negative repercussions. Damaging repercussions. Any decline in tourism could have serious repercussions for the local economy. Undermine. Make something less important and less powerful. Undermine a notion. Undermine a theory. Undermine an assumption. Undermine an argument. Economic aid tends to undermine the national independence of poor countries. Long-term. Involving a relatively long period of time. Long-term care. Long-term effects. Long-term exposure. Long-term hazards. It is challenging to make long-term forecasts for a fast-growing education system. Efficient. Working in a well-organized and competent way. Energy efficient. Economically efficient. Technically efficient. Operationally efficient. We must make the most efficient use of the available natural resources. Emerging. Just beginning to exist or be noticed. Emerging markets. Emerging problems. Emerging technology. Emerging trends. The emerging science of photography has already changed styles in art. Scrutinize. Inspect closely and thoroughly. Scrutinize a decision. Scrutinize an application. Scrutinize a proposal. Scrutinize a judgment. His performance was carefully scrutinized by the regulatory authority. Carbon dating. The determination of the age of old material. Carbon dating tests. Carbon dating methods. Carbon dating techniques. Carbon dating events. They used a carbon dating procedure to know the exact date of the skeleton. Exposure. The act of exposing, or laying open. Public's exposure. Radiation exposure. Radioactive exposure. Toxic exposure. Prolonged exposure to the sun can cause different types of skin cancer. Fastest growing. Growing very quickly. Fastest growing economy. Fastest growing market. Fastest growing religion. Fastest growing segment. People over the age of 60 make up the fastest growing population segment. Withstand. To stand or hold out against. Withstand an attack. Withstand a challenge. Withstand an onslaught. Withstand an earthquake. The wooden boat was built to withstand every weather condition at sea. Biased. Preferring someone or something unfairly. A biased argument. A biased testimony. A biased opinion. A biased decision. Managers are generally biased towards projects showing a quick return. Uphold. To defend or keep a principle or law. Uphold a principle. Uphold a standard. Uphold a tradition. Uphold a trend. The government has promised to uphold the values of democracy. Corporate. Relating to a large company or group. Corporate culture. Corporate hierarchy. Corporate influence. Corporate ladder. The company is shifting its corporate headquarters from New York to Houston. Commodities. Any useful or valuable things. Basic commodities. Tradable commodities. Marketable commodities. Valuable commodities. Air conditioners are one of the many commodities that Japan sells overseas. Compensate. Giving money in recognition of loss. Financially compensated. Adequately compensated. Amply compensated. Fully compensated. The factory will compensate their workers if they are injured at work.